The guide was also above, as you mentioned. Now, earlier today, speaking of demand, I was talking to Amazon CEO Andy Jassy. He told me that as of now, if he had more AI resources to sell through AWS, he could sell more. That's kind of the short-term signal of demand that you talked about on the call. Tell me more about the midterm signals that investors should be aware of that give you confidence in the continued demand, the scale outs of data centers, AI factories, relative to what you've historically seen.
The short-term signal are just our POs and the forecasts. And on top of that, the things that are not forecasted are new startup companies that are spinning off. And some of these are quite famous. And, you know, at the risk of forgetting any of them, I won't mention any of them, but there's some really, really fantastic startups that have come out as a result of new reasoning AI capabilities and, you know, artificial general intelligence capabilities that they have breakthroughs in. And there's several of them that are related to agentic AIs, really exciting companies. And there's several of them related to physical AIs. You know, there's just handfuls of each one of them, and each one of them needs additional compute. And that's, you know, the type of things that Andy talks about, because they need to go to AWS and they have urgent need for more compute right away. And so that's on top of what we already knew to have POs and forecasts and such. The midterm comes from the fact that this year's capital investment for data centers is so much greater than last year's. And of course, we had a very large year last year. We had a great year last year. It stands to reason that with Blackwell and with all the new data centers going online, we're going to have a fairly great year. Now, long term, the thing that's really exciting is we're just at the beginning of the reasoning AI era. You know, this is the time when AI is thinking to itself before it answers a question. Instead of just immediately generating an answer, it'll reason about it, maybe break it down step by step. It'll do maybe some searching in its own mind before it creates and composes a smart answer for you. The amount of computation necessary to do that reasoning process is 100 times more than what we used to do. So if you could imagine, we thought computation, the amount of compute necessary was a lot last year. And then all of a sudden, reasoning AI, DeepSeek was an example of that. ChatGPT 4o is an example of that. Grok 3 reasoning is an example of that. So all of these reasoning AI models now need a lot more compute than what we used to
let me stop you there,
that puts even more load.
Because some people took DeepSeek to mean actually that you need less compute, right? Because the initial report was that they were doing more with less. But you're saying, in fact, some of what came out of DeepSeek was the opposite, that there's going to be more compute demanded. Unpack that for me.
There are 3 phases in how AI works, how AI is developed largely. Number 1 is pre-training. It's kind of like us going through high school. A lot of basic math, basic language, basic everything. That basic understanding of human knowledge is essential to do what's the next step, which is called post-training. In post-training, you might get human feedback. You know, it's like a teacher showing it to you. We call it reinforcement learning, human feedback. You might practice and do thought experiments. You're just preparing for a test. You're doing a whole lot of practices. We call it reinforcement learning, AI feedback. You could either also do tests and practice, and we call it reinforcement learning, verifiable reward feedback. So now basically it's AIs teaching AIs how to be better AIs. That post-training process is where an enormous amount of innovation is happening right now. A lot of it happened with these reasoning models. And that computation load could be 100 times more than pre-training. And then here comes inference, the reasoning process. Instead of just spewing out an answer, when prompted, it reasons about it. It thinks about how best to answer that question, breaks it down step by step, might even reflect upon it, come up with several versions, pick the best one, and then presents it to you. So the amount of computation that we have to do, even at inference time now, is 100 times more than what we used to do when ChatGPT first came out. And so all of a sudden, the combination of all these ideas, largely related to reinforcement learning and synthetic data generation and reasoning, all of this is just causing compute demand to go sky high.
Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang addressed the investor jitters recently after the recent quarterly earnings report. He also called out DeepSeek and spoke about its potential without hurting Nvidia stock. With bold vision and unwavering confidence, Jensen Huang anticipates a new era where data centers morph into AI-driven powerhouses. So, what's driving this unwavering belief in the chip maker's future prospects? Let's delve deeper into Jensen Huang's remarkable speech and response. Welcome back, everyone, to Investocracy.
Now, tell me about price performance, because this is one of those things that I think a lot of investors are trying to figure out. They see the hyperscalers coming out with their own chips. They say, hey, boy, there are a lot of customers who don't have a lot of money to spend. They want to get the most bang for their buck. So they'll view Trainium, Inferentia, Microsoft chips, Google's chips as potential competitors for Nvidia. But at the same time, you talked on the earnings call about performance per watt. Right? And so it seems to me at GDC, and I know our Jim Cramer is going to be there with you next month, that's where you introduce new products and new powerful use cases. If your performance of what you're coming out with next is that much higher than what's otherwise available on the market, does that mean, would you argue that your price performance actually ends up better than what's cheaper?
The reason why we sell so much, it's because our price performance is the best. And it's absolutely the case that performance per watt is incredibly important. And the reason for that is because a data center is only so large. That data center could be 250 megawatts or it could be a gigawatt. But within that data center, however large it is, you want the amount of revenues you can generate to be as high as possible. So you want to do two things. You want to generate very high quality tokens. AI is ultimately expressed in tokens, and that's what you monetize, dollars per million tokens. You want to generate very high quality tokens because you could get better pricing on that, better ASP. On the other hand, you want to get as many tokens out of that data center as you can. And in order to do that, your performance has to be excellent, and your performance per watt has to be excellent. And so the simple way of thinking about that is if your performance per unit energy is the highest, the revenues you can help a company generate is the absolute highest. And if you look at the way we are driving our roadmap between Hopper and Blackwell, our token generation rate for these reasoning AI models can be as high as 25 times. That's the same thing as saying that factory can generate 25 times more revenues using Blackwell than you could using Hopper before that.
Right.
Which is the reason why demand for Blackwell is so great.
In a candid dialogue with Wall Street sages, CEO Jensen Huang unfolds his blueprint for an AI-drenched world fueled by Nvidia's prowess. Data centers, soon to be AI factories, he declares, envisioning a future where computational muscle galvanizes every industry. Despite the immediate tremors from DeepSeek's audacious leap into AI, Nvidia's customer base, an ensemble of every tech juggernaut imaginable, marches undeterred, wielding an investment war chest estimated at $320 billion for AI initiatives alone. But before going on with the video, are you into cryptocurrency? If so, check out our second channel, Investocracy Crypto. We bring you breaking news, expert analysis, and the latest trends in the fast-moving world of digital assets. Whether you're a seasoned crypto investor or just curious about the future of finance, we've got something for you. Click the link in the description to subscribe to Investocracy Crypto now. Don't miss out and stay ahead of the game. Now, let's get back to the video.
And every single year, we're increasing our performance per dollar, performance per energy, performance per watt, so that everybody's data centers become more energy efficient on the one hand, generate more revenues on the other hand.
So let me ask you about your China business. You talked on the call about how the percentage of revenue is half what it was before export controls. Does the emergence of DeepSeek, which some have cast as a workaround, some of those restrictions, does it tell us anything about the effectiveness of export controls?
It's hard to tell whether export control is effective. The thing that I can tell you is this. Our percentage revenues in China before export controls is twice as high as it is now. There's a fair amount of competition in China. Export control and otherwise, Huawei, other companies are quite rigorous and very, very competitive. And so I think that ultimately software finds a way. Maybe that's the easiest way of thinking about it. You know, software is always, whether you're developing software for a supercomputer or software for a personal computer or software for a phone or software for a game console, you ultimately make that software work on whatever system that you're targeting, and you create great software. And so that's kind of the beauty of software engineers. They're incredibly innovative and clever in this way.
Nvidia's Blackwell chip promises customization, letting customers mold data center configurations to their unique needs. While initial stumbles pointed to overheating server racks, Huang assures investors that such hiccups are mere stepping stones in this extraordinary product journey, because Blackwell has been the best-selling thing Nvidia has put out ever. And yes, even as geopolitical moves like US export controls nip at Nvidia's heels in China, Huang reiterates that no technological stride has the promise to transform global GDP more profoundly than AI. But before going any further, if you made it this far into the video, thank you. These videos take a lot of effort and time to make, so if you enjoyed them, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. This goes a long way in helping us grow. That said, back to the video.
Our architecture is about the flexibility of software, and which is kind of nice. But ultimately, here in the United States, if you look at where we are now compared to what is controlled, GB200 is probably something along the lines of 60 times the token generation rate of what is being shipped in China that's currently export controlled.
Okay.
And so the separation of performance is quite high. You know, ultimately, what we know we experience is a great deal of competition there.
Real quick, I think last quarter you said demand for Blackwell was insane. This quarter you said it's extraordinary. Are those about the same? Is one better than the other?
I would say that my feelings about Blackwell is better today than it was last quarter. And the reason for that is because we, of course, ramped up into production. We exceeded our target. And the teams did an amazing job. As you recall, we had a hiccup in our design flaw in Blackwell that we found early on last quarter or quarter before that. And we recovered tremendously well, and I'm very proud of the team for that. And so for those reasons, I feel pretty great from an execution perspective. From a demand perspective, you know, DeepSeek was fantastic. It was fantastic because it open sourced the reasoning model that's absolutely world-class. Just about every AI developer in the world today has either incorporated R1 using, it's called distillation, distilled from R1, or using techniques that have been open sourced out of R1 so that their models could be a lot more capable. Across the world, AI has become better as a result of the last several months. And so I'm excited about that. And the demand for computation, for inference time, for test time scaling, which is one of the reasons why Grace Blackwell NVLink 72 is so exciting. That feature is now more prominent than ever, more demanded than ever. And I think the demand side of it is more exciting too.
As we bid adieu to the uncertain times before Nvidia reported its earnings for the quarter, Nvidia stands resilient, a testament to tenacity in the ever-shifting sands of the stock market. With the invigorating promise of AI accelerating industries and the tantalizing allure of cutting-edge chips, it's the best time for investors considering the stock's trajectory. But what do you think? Share your thoughts. Finally, if you would like to know what companies like Nvidia have been up to these past few days, go ahead and click on the next video on your screen. See you there.